Before you replace your high quality Japanese alternator that's failing with a cheap Chinese unit, you're going to want to watch this video and see how to replace this $15 part that will restore your alternator back into working condition. This applies to 2UZ powered rigs such as the 4th Gen 4runner with the V8, the LEXUS GX470, the Toyota Tundra, as well as the Toyota Sequoia. Today I'm doing a little general maintenance on this LEXUS GX470. It has 262,000 miles, so I know for a fact that the alternator is getting close to failing. I've seen them make it to 370,000 on the original alternator, but this one's going on a long road trip and I want to make sure that it doesn't have any problems along the way. So today I'm replacing the brush pack. Most of the time when an alternator fails, it's when the brushes get worn out and it stops charging. Other failures include the bearings going out, so if it's squealing while turning or getting really hot, this will not fix it. But if it's just failing to charge, you can fix it for $15. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description for this part. I picked this up off eBay, and this is my 4th time doing a brush pack. It's actually very easy. The hardest part is taking the alternator off. This is a step-by-step how-to. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop the hood and we'll dive right in. The process is gonna be the same on all the 2UZ cars. The Lexus, however, has the most plastic covers. So we have this one here and this one here. I'm gonna get these out of the way and disconnect the battery. There should be two 10mm. This has a weird tab. 2 10s there, 2 here. And then we'll disconnect the positive on the battery. Should also be a 10mm. There should also be 2 plastic tabs down here, but this one's missing them. So if yours has them, you might need to pull those out. Once you have the 2 tabs and the 10s off, this will pop out. Then we'll move on to the engine cover. Once you have the nuts off, you pick up the front and then pull it forward. It has these 2 catches that go on the rubber mounts, and one of these has been previously broken. Now, if you have a Tundra or Sequoia, you won't have any of those and it will pretty much look like this already. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the intake as well as this coolant reservoir to free up some space. There should be a 10mm hose clamp here, one here, and then on the coolant reservoir, there's a 10mm here and one on this other side as well. Additionally, there's an air hose right here, as well as one down here to the fuel pressure regulator. So I will pull it off on this side because it's easier to access. And then going back to the front of the intake, we have one here. And it really helps to twist hoses before you bother prying on them. Once they move, they come off a lot easier. On these clamps, make sure not to drop this little circle piece. Sometimes they fall off. This one seems to be stuck on pretty well. And I should be able to pull off the intake like so. Get it from the other side. With the intake out of the way, it's a lot easier to access the bolts for the reservoir. And we can disconnect this hose right here and pop it to the side. As it turns out, there is a third 10mm way down in here, right there. Drop it. Now you can remove the coolant reservoir. Here's a view under the hood of my Tundra, and the Sequoia will be the same. As you can see, there's no AC lines running, so it's going to be a lot easier than the Lexus. We just have some more lines to work around, but that's why I'm showing you guys on the Lexus. Anything else is easier than this. Toyota decided to be nice and put the alternator under the power steering pump. Some people say you need to take the power steering off. You can actually loosen it and just slide it forward, and that will get it out of the way enough. This is not exactly an easy job. It's not exactly a hard job. That power steering pump really makes it a pain. And on the Lexus version, we have these AC lines that are routed right there. The Tundra and Sequoia don't have them right there. I personally like doing as little work as possible, so I'm gonna not take the fan or the shroud off. If you want more room, go for it. I'm gonna get a 14 and a wrench and get on the tensioner so I can disconnect the belt. But before I do any of that, I'm gonna pull the skid plate so we can see it from the bottom. I drop the alternators out the bottom. It's the easiest way to do it. For the skid plate, we have two 12mm up front or 112 and some zip ties, and then 2 more 12s back here, or 6 more zip ties. But there should be a 12 millimeter way up in there. And on the Lexus, there appears to be 2 10 millimeters and a push tab to the bumper. But they're really all the same. The Lexus just has more crap on it to come off. I wonder if this guy had a 240. 240 owners always be zip tying their cars together. Now it should have a tab, and you lift up and push. It should be 2 tabs like that. So you should come forward. With the skid plate off, we have a view of our target. There's the alternator. And to me, that looks like an aftermarket unit. So I think someone's already replaced this with a cheap Chinese one. So we're still gonna go ahead and pull it off and see what it looks like and check the condition of everything. But this video might take a little turn as far as we're still gonna do it. But we might be repairing the one on the Tundra, because I know that's an OEM alternator. Here are some examples of why you fix your factory alternator rather than putting an aftermarket unit in. How was your stock alternator?
It was great.
How many miles did it last?
395,000.
How's it running after the brush pack?
Perfect.
If you're working solo, I take a bungee and put it on the wrench, and then I can pull it and tie it off to something. Now we want to try to leave the belt on everything that we can, so I'm going to go down underneath the car and just pull it off the alternator. So it started to come off this. I'm going to pop it back on that and try to leave it just like that. So we just take it off the alternator. All right, guys, I am looking at this and there's so much stuff in the way that I've changed my mind. I'm going to pull this out of the way. I'm going to pull the belt off the power steering pump as well. And then pull it over this way. And I'm going to try to keep it on everything else. And just pop it up like this so it doesn't unwrap from the AC and stuff down there that it's trying to. But you should have a belt routing diagram on your hood. If you don't, there it is. It gets a little tight with the coolant line and the fan. You can pull that stuff off if you want. You don't have to, but it is a little tight. That's better. So next up, we are gonna make the power steering pump slide. There is a bolt right there. And then I believe there's 2 more. There's definitely 2. I'll let you know if there's a third. Get your swivel-headed wrench with a long 14. This one's Harbor Freight because I only use the best tools. So you put the wrench through the pulley. And I'm gonna start with the upper one. Make sure you're on it, because if you strip this bolt, you're really gonna be upset. Once it's loose, I pop the socket off, and you can use just the socket to unscrew the bolt. Go ahead and pull the bolt all the way out and just throw it on the ground, I guess. There it is. That was the top one. Simple, just straight through. Now we're going for the lower one. We can actually see it better from the bottom. There it is right there. I can't even see it. I'm just gonna go by feel. And that's it. It's at the bottom. Let's get the wrench on it. Once they're loose, they generally come off nice and easily. Oh, there's a third one though. Pump is still tight. Same length as the other. Aha, the nut is at the very top. Here we go. So this one will be easy at least. And if you want the pump completely out of the way, you can use an E-socket, E-Torx, whatever it is, to pull the stud. But as long as it will slide forward, you can get the alternator out. You don't need to remove it. This one pulled the stud. Interesting, I've never had one do that. Generally, it pulls just the nut and you can slide the pump forward. This pulled the stud. So with the stud off, the pump completely is out of the way. I'm actually gonna go put the stud in to show you guys just how to slide it forward, because odds are your stud's not gonna come out like that one did. If you do wanna pull the stud, it is an E8. Stud's back in, and that's all you need to get the alternator out. Just for it to slide a little bit. So that's good to go. Now we can move on to the alternator itself. We have a 14 right there on the top, and then on the bottom we have a second 14 right there. So I'm gonna disconnect those. We'll finesse the alternator around so we can disconnect the electrical. If I can do this one-handed filming, you got it. This is a tight fit. Oh, ow. For the lower one, we're gonna use the short 14. I think what those AC lines are for the rear AC in the GX. So they might be on the Sequoia as well, but they're definitely not on the Tundra. Need a hand to get it up on so I don't strip it. Been a while since I've done one of these, I'm not gonna lie. There's a third bolt right there, and we can get the third nut from the top. It's right there. It should be a 14. I don't know why it's not fitting. Oh, I guess it might be a 12. I remember it being a 14 on the Tundras, so it's a 12 or a 14. I got the nut. It was a 12 mil. The issue is whoever put this on did some weird stuff and the second stud was pulling off. So I had to tighten it, get the stud tight, and then impact the 12 off, and that got it loose. I've never had either of those studs pull out, so I blame whoever worked on this before. Maybe whoever did the timing belt on it. They didn't tighten the studs enough or something like that. Anyway, now we have all three on the alternator off. So the alternator is ready to finesse forward. Let's do that from the bottom, and we should be able to just grab it and pull it, and it's just pulling the power steering pump forward. So that's what we want, but we're gonna get it till it drops. And there it goes. Sorry about the camera angle, guys, but the alternator drops like that. Here's the lower bolt. But now that the alternator's out, we can spin it in the car and get it so we can see the electrical connections. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the 14s here and the 14s over here, so the sway bar's out of the way. So if you have the GX with that weird electric sway bar crap, this might be harder. So much more room. Now we're gonna rotate this till we can see all the electrical. There we are. The terminal should have a cover like this, and what you want to do is kind of put your finger under here and pull sideways and get it to pop off. The more you can stretch it outward, the less of a chance of breaking these tabs. These ones did break off. Now we can disconnect the two electrical connections. Oh. And you want to pay attention to which way this orients, because it has these two wings and it will orient in multiple different ways. It looks like on this one we're going to use front and left. We'll push the wiring out of our way. Double check that your battery's disconnected, because if not, this will be live right here. You can blow a lot of crap up. Now, we should be able to finesse the alternator out just like that. Wasn't that easy? It really wasn't, but it's doable. And I've had people completely pull the power steering pumps. You don't need to. pull this radiator hose and drain coolant. You don't need to. It would make it easier, but you can wedge it out of there just like I showed you. So this is definitely a reman unit that looks like AutoZone Mexico. Sounds pretty good, and it was working fine. I just assumed it was a stock alternator, so we were doing it as general maintenance. So I'm gonna go rip the alternator out of my Tundra, and we'll replace the brush pack on that. Here's the alternator. This is an OEM Denso Toyota unit. This is actually off my 4th Gen 4runner, the V8 one with 255K. I tried to pull the alternator off my Tundra, but I broke 2 skid plate bolts, and then the third one just was like stripping, and it was bad. I couldn't get the skid plate off. So I just went and got the 4th Gen and took that one off. I will say it has that rear AC that the GX does. The Sequoia probably has that rear AC as well. So the Tundra is probably the only one that's easy. Anyway, if you're losing power steering fluid and your alternator's failing, you're gonna wanna replace the power steering pump. The alternators tend to fail when they get power steering fluid dumped on them. We can see it's covered in oil, so that's not good. On all the alternators that I've previously done, I've used these cheap kits off eBay that are like 15 bucks. I've never had one issue with them, and they're great. It's just brushes. I went ahead and got an OEM set for you guys. That way, if you're really wanting to put Toyota parts on it, I have the part number for you. Links for everything are down below, because I got you guys. But if you guys could do me a favor and subscribe, I would really appreciate that. All this stuff is not free, but I love sharing my knowledge with you guys. Let's go ahead and tear this thing apart. We shouldn't have to touch anything on the front. You should be able to service this just from the back. Grab an 8mm or a 5/16 and get the 3 nuts off. Now this cover should slide off. Just like that. And there's the brush pack right there. I recommend using an impact because you don't want to strip these screws. And here's a rubber insulator. We want to transfer this to the new one. And let's see how bad this brush pack looks. So look at that. This thing has 255K on it. And honestly, I think that would have made it another 40K, maybe 50K. So not terrible, but I do consider this routine maintenance on these. I see plenty of Toyotas with like 400 or 500K. I've had a 3.4 where the alternator bid it at 350 and Tim's alternator bid it at 370. Let's take a look at the brush pack from Toyota and compare quality with the cheap one. Toyota is on the left. Definitely looks like we have a different material in the brushes. There's the part number 27370-75060. Toyota. Quick update, that part number is not correct for the 4th Gen 4runner or the GX470. Here's the correct part number. I've used these specific part numbers successfully on 1st Gen Tundra as well as a 3rd Gen 4runner. I've done my best to get you guys the correct part numbers, but I could still be wrong. I will tell you, 99% of them are the same. If you look at just how many this number fits, it's a lot. I don't know why this one I just did was different, but it was. I ordered a couple of these and I got one for a 3.4 V6, a 5VZ, same part number. So based on that, I could assume this fits Tacomas and 4runners as well as probably a lot of other Toyotas. So this is a good part number to have. Honestly, I've had great luck with the cheap ones. There's about a $10 difference here. This is under $15. This is around $25. I'm gonna use the cheap one because I honestly doubt I'll ever drive this V8 4runner. And this will easily last 100,000 miles. So I'm definitely not gonna put 100K because I drive all my other cars. Let's go ahead and slide this on. I do recommend cleaning out all the crap because there's a bunch of black crap right there. Look at it. Just a little blow and she is good to go. Makes a little noise, nothing terrible. Now I take a screwdriver and use it to push back the brushes and slide the pack on. Just like that. So what I just noticed is this is the one I just took out and it's flat. This one has these at 2 different levels. Not too sure what's up with that, but this one is at the correct level, it looks like. So this one's a little higher. So I'm just gonna pop it on here and not worry about it. We'll pop the one screw in that reaches nice. And that helped squeeze this thing down in there. It's a pretty tight fit. And we'll just see if this other screw fits in. Not grabbing right now. Let's tighten down the first one again. I'm just gonna get a socket that fits in here tightly and bend that thing downward. Now the screw should be able to pull it. I'm sure that will be fine just like that. And that is how simple it is to replace a brush pack, and that will fix an alternator that's not charging. Oftentimes replacing that will yield you another 200,000 miles out of this unit, and an AutoZone unit tends to fail after 100,000 miles. Plus it's an additional 200 bucks. So now let's pop everything back together. The one that came off had alignment pins. The alignment pins don't really matter. Just set it on top like so and pop your cover on. It's under a little pressure. So once you tighten these, it's not going anywhere. Done. Ready to go back in service. As good. So now we go ahead and put our alternator back in with the new brush pack. If you don't need to watch the rest of the video, more power to you. We're just gonna do everything that we did in reverse. The last thing we want to do is fire it up and check the voltage to make sure we're charging. It's going to be obvious it's not charging if there's a battery light. All right, that shows that it should be charging. If you have a multimeter, just set it to DC volts, and we're at 14.2. I personally like 14.7, but there's a lot of load on the LEXUS systems. There's a lot of electronics in it. So that's acceptable. This thing was charging before. I know it's charging now. And there you have it, guys. That's how to pull off the alternator and replace the brush pack on it. That fixes 90% of alternators, unless you're having a bearing noise or a regulator problem. I would go so far as to say 98% of the time, it's just the brush pack. The stock Denso unit is capable of reaching 600,000 miles, no problem. If this video helped you, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.